Nice to have you here, Bryce. Thanks for
Thank you so much, Simon. Appreciate it.
Go ahead.
Okay, no, just confirming that's all good from a technical perspective. You can see my screen. You hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can see the screen. Sometimes there's a little bit delay I saw with other presentations, but it will pick itself up. So that should be no issue. I'm happy to have you here. I used to do work for a company who did import clearance, and I know how complex it is when it comes to HS code, valuation, country regulations, all this kind of thing. So I'm curious to hear what you have to share with us today, and I'm sure there's going to be tons of good insights. So please take it away, Bryce.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Simon. And overall, thanks to the HyperSKU team for having me. I'm overall extremely excited to be chatting with you guys about global expansion and basically how doing things the wrong way can be costly to your finances, your liquidity, as well as your capital. Just as a quick intro, I am Bryce Winning. I head up the partnerships and affiliates division at Z. Z is an e-commerce importer of record and turnkey import specialist. We are focused on ensuring an e-commerce seller is compliant through every part of their global expansion, giving them the ability to trade freely and legally in any markets through logistics, tax, as well as import compliance assistance. Many sellers can be hesitant about the seemingly daunting task that is going global, but I guess this is what the session is for. And basically, when we're done here, you'll better be able to understand the steps that are needed when expanding internationally. Having worked with hundreds of sellers, we at Z, we understand that growing your business is your #1 priority. And I guess in my experience, there are two overarching ways a seller can do this. The first way is expanding their product range. The second way would be selling into more markets. And today, I'd like to share 3 stories where sellers try to expand their business into other e-commerce marketplaces. So basically touching on point 2, which is selling into more markets. Each story will basically highlight how and where each seller went wrong in the process, showing you exactly what not to do when it is your turn to take your products abroad, avoiding costly mistakes. The first seller in our first story, let's call him Mark. He's a US-based e-commerce seller who sells bicycles domestically on Amazon.com. After some research, he discovers a massive market for bikes in Europe, and that Germany is the perfect place for trialing his product internationally. He knows that Germany is the second largest Amazon marketplace outside of the USA, and that success there would have a tremendous effect on his profit margins. Mark then sets up his Amazon Seller Central account to sell into Germany. In his excitement, he packages 5 bicycles and sends them straight to the Amazon FBA warehouse in Germany. He contacts a freight forwarder to take his goods across to Germany, but the German authorities do not allow the goods to pass through customs when they arrive. Mark is rightly bewildered. He failed to realize that his entity and his products were not compliant to pass Germany's borders and was seized at the border as a result. This basically demonstrates the importance of nailing entity and product compliance the first time when moving products into a new country. Mark should have ensured that his business met the regulations and that he had the required licenses or documents to import into Germany. He assumed that because his company could sell in the US, there would be no issues when selling elsewhere. And that's actually a common mistake that sellers make. There are several requirements that Mark's business must meet to be entity compliant. Germany is one of the many countries that require foreign sellers to be registered for VAT, which is basically value-added tax in that country. VAT is a tax on consumer expenditure that is collected on business transactions, imports, as well as movements of goods between countries. Each VAT charge is dependent on the importing country and has different importers' requirements. Part of the VAT registration within the EU also requires a seller to have an EORI number. This basically stands for Economic Operators Registration and Identification Number, needed for businesses and people who want to trade in any European country. Mark did not have a VAT or EORI number before sending his goods to Germany, and thus failed to be entity compliant. Mark also ran into issues because his product, bicycles, were not compliant with Germany's regulations. Product compliance basically refers to documents or safety procedures that a product must comply with in order to be imported successfully. Mark failed to obtain necessary compliance documents required by German safety standards, and thus they failed to be compliant. And as an importer, Mark needs to understand that he is responsible for ensuring that all products he places on the markets are safe and legal to sell. So that was Mark's story. He was very close to success, but some easily avoidable mistakes resulted in his failure to break into new markets. Our next story takes us to the UK, where Ali sells pet toothbrushes quite successfully and makes over $500,000 a year as an Amazon seller. She hears from a friend in France that pet accessories are becoming popular amongst French pet owners, and after some research, she finds a gap in the Amazon France marketplace. Ali is more informed than Mark, and she knows that she needs to ensure that her business and her pet toothbrushes are compliant for selling in France. Hence, she has successfully obtained her VAT and EORI number and is ready to import. Ali organizes with a courier to air freight her product straight into France on priority shipping with all the proper compliance documents. She finds a great logistics partner to help her get her goods into France, and they promise they will pay for her duties and taxes. Ali does not realize, first of all, the financial loss she has undertaken by shipping priority through an air courier. Air freight is usually much faster than sea or road. Many sea shipments can take about a month to arrive, while air takes about 10 days, give or take. So if time is of the essence, some companies also opt for a fast courier service to ensure that their goods are delivered within a few days. Land and air transport are also usually best for lighter, smaller shipments, where time is of the essence, while sea is better for large, heavy goods. So Ali could have opted for her products to be transported on road or sea to raise her profit margin. Once her products arrive in France after their costly flight across the English Channel, Ali's goods are seized at customs. Ali cannot understand why this is so, especially after ensuring her entity and her products are compliant. Ali has made the categorical error of not realizing she would need an importer of record to ensure that she was import compliant in France when the goods arrived. This step is actually one of the most crucial yet overlooked steps in the import process. You may be wondering why it matters to have an importer of record. Well, it's quite simple. Do you think an e-commerce platform or marketplace, Amazon, for example, can act as an importer of record for your goods? Generally, Amazon, including the fulfillment centers and other e-commerce platforms, will not serve as the importer of record for any shipment. Any shipment attempting to enter an Amazon marketplace with Amazon as the IOR will be refused and returned at the shipper's expense, no exceptions. And that goes for most e-commerce platforms as well as marketplaces. With that being said, it's clear why an IOR, which is an importer of record, is essential when expanding into global marketplaces. An IOR can be any locally registered entity in the destination country. By registered entity, we mean someone with a local tax registration who is happy to be held responsible for imported products as the importer and make sure the distribution center basically accepts it. An IOR also works with customs officials to document and value the goods and produce payment for duties, fees, and tariffs on your behalf. Ali's goods, unfortunately, did not reach the warehouse in France and were returned to the UK. After this ordeal, Ali decided she would rather sell locally. An opportunity missed that was quickly seized by, obviously, another e-commerce seller who basically knew how to use an IOR properly. That's Ali's story. She's still selling her pet toothbrushes, but she could have given pets all over France the brightest smiles that could be seen from the other side of the English Channel. Moving on to our next story and our final story, which is basically taking us to Australia, where Steve sells kangaroo jumpers. Steve has been quite successful in Australia, and one day on his seller Facebook group, he comes across a post that shows that Japanese people have started wearing kangaroo jumpers to high-end events. Steve decides to jump at this opportunity and looks to sell into the Japanese markets. He makes sure that his entity and products are compliant with Japanese regulations, and that his products are packaged and labeled in accordance with Amazon Japan's specifications. Luckily for Steve, he sees on his Facebook group that he needs an importer of record to ensure that his products safely get to the end warehouse. Steve ensures that he has all of these before arranging delivery of his goods to his Japanese warehouse. Steve books his goods on sea freights into Japan. Generally, it will take about 1 to 2 weeks. And Steve's goods arrive safely in the warehouse and sell out in record time. Steve is ecstatic and cannot wait to send new stock to Japan. Steve asks his friend, who works for a tax firm, to help him organize his documents to claim back his import VAT or JCT. This will basically be a massive help in funding his new stock purchase. But Steve is not aware of how precisely organized his documents need to be in order to reclaim this JCT or VAT successfully. And the tax authorities reject his friend's attempt. As a result, Steve loses out on a large amount of capital he could have reinvested in his business. This severely limits the stock he can buy and puts him on the back foot moving forward. Because of this, Steve was down under and could have easily claimed back the VAT or JCT if he had the right VAT partner to help him. Onto the more technical side of things, we briefly touched on the need for import VAT reclaim, but something that didn't come up is the need to have a local VAT registration in countries that you are holding stock in and selling in that markets. Depending on how you are selling your goods, if you are drop shipping versus local fulfillment, you might need a different registration for tax purposes. If we are speaking about the EU, generally dropshippers would need an IOSS registration, which is basically standing for Import One-Stop Shop, if the value of the goods are below 150 euros, and if over, then a one-stop shop, an OSS registration. HyperSKU and Z can assist sellers with different forms of shipping or import, which makes this partnership great, I guess. Z allows for local fulfillments, which comes with importing bulk shipments of inventory to a fulfillment center or warehouse to be held for local delivery. This generally comes with a need for a local entity to represent the seller at customs, an importer of record, which Z acts as. And of course, we can assist with tax registrations and logistics from warehouse to warehouse. HyperSKU, on the other hand, would assist with the D2C small parcel shipping, as well as product sourcing for the seller, as you know, which often requires a seller to register for an IOSS registration. So between the two of us, you would be able to source a product in China, for example, and deliver direct to a consumer in Germany, but also bulk import stock to hold in Germany, for example, for local fulfillments. The best of both worlds, all while doing so compliantly. It must also be stated that Z can assist in multiple countries. I'm only purely using Germany as an example because of how difficult it is with the German tax authorities, its customs authorities. But basically, we critique the stories of Mark, Ali, and Steve, and we showed you the steps you should have taken, or they should have taken, to successfully expand globally. In them not following these steps, stock was held at the border, and in some cases may have been returned to the original warehouse, which is an expense the seller will incur, and not to mention the capital hits not reclaiming your import VAT will have on your bottom line. There may be a similar scenario that has happened to you, and if that is the case, I hope you have learned something and don't make the same mistakes they did. And of course, if you want to get in touch with me after the webinar, please feel free to reach out to me at brycec@z.co. You'll see on screen my email address, or you can just find me on LinkedIn at Bryce. Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Simon and team.
Awesome. Thank you for that. The 3 examples actually show how complex it can be if you're not prepared. And we see a lot of online entrepreneurs who are exploring to be an entrepreneur, but sometimes forget this part of the homework and focus on finding a winning product and running traffic and running ads, and then surprises come, such as these. So it's great to have a chance to educate sellers in general. You mentioned several issues that come by in the 3 examples. So which of these are more like basically most overlooked when it comes to import clearance?
I think it would probably be the imports of record, because I mean, I think that registration part of things is more well known than many companies that assist with it. I know Nick, who's speaking after me, or might touch on that aspect as well. But imports of record, because sometimes sellers can get lucky at customs in terms of getting their goods through without an import of record. They assume that that's going to be the case for every single import, and then shock, horror, surprise, it gets held at customs. Their inventory doesn't get delivered on time to the warehouse. The end customer is obviously quite frustrated, rightly so, that their delivery is not on time. And yeah, so definitely the import compliance at customs is probably the most overlooked, that's for sure.
And for your customer audience, is that mostly Amazon sellers and eBay sellers, or also includes other platforms or niches? Any
e-commerce seller. I mentioned Amazon a lot, mainly because they do have fairly strict laws, and they are one of the marketplaces who have outright said that they will not act as an importer of record for the goods at customs. So that is a common market of ours, but we can assist. If you're an online seller looking to go out of your local country into a foreign market, we can help you.
Okay. Let me just check. There's one question coming in the main chats. Like, what's overwhelming is how to pay taxes, how to pay the taxes that are involved with international shipping out to the customer, how to be compliant and report them in a correct way. And this is do your homework, I guess.
Yeah, I would say do your homework, but also, especially when it comes to foreign tax, it is work with a specialist. Don't try and do it yourself. I think many people have made the mistake of trying to deal with foreign tax offices themselves, and the fines that are imposed, which can often be either a fixed fee depending on the country or a percentage of the VAT liability if a return is not on time or it's non-compliance. I wouldn't want to put that risk into my own hands. I'd rather let someone who knows what they're doing. Maybe, well, not to say that the seller won't know what they're doing, but that is their specialty, that is their job. They have local feet on the ground within that country, handle the tax element for you.
Because sometimes we have, there are a lot of forwarders who ship out DDP. So it's already in the shipping cost, it already has the custom clearance. Can you elaborate on the risk for that? Because that's definitely the import of record is kind of unknown in that sense, I would say.
A lot of freight forwarders either work with an importer of record or are an importer of record themselves, but we are noticing more and more that if they don't have the correct HS code classification, the duties and taxes paid might not be accurate, or the duties and taxes that are estimated might not be accurate. If you're working with a company that has next level HS code classification tech, it reduces the liability like 10x almost. And yeah, freight forwarders, sometimes they may not have the correct technology to estimate those duties and taxes when shipping DDP, which is why it is recommended to work with a company that is fully focused and has a team that does that, as well as a reliable technology behind it.
Yeah, I saw Gisela coming live, so yeah, I assume you have a question as well, right?
I just want to jump in and say hi and thank you for joining us, Bryce.
It's a pleasure, Gisela. Thank you so much for that.
Can you explain more about like your the V Suite from VAT Global? Like, I know you're fully covered knowledge of it. Can you share more with us?
Sure. So V Suite is basically an online platform that allows a seller to track both the VAT registrations and GST registrations that they are registering for in 50 to 70 countries around the world. So tracking the status of the registration, as well as having a central platform to house all your tax obligations. So it's basically one platform that will be able to allow you to track all the different liabilities that you have in the different countries, as well as populate your own VAT returns. But also, if you want to obviously use our service, then it will be the platform that you communicate with one account manager for all your tax obligations, regardless of the language that they are in, as well as tracking when they are due, where they are in the process, and then basically allowing you to project manage your tax liabilities, which is good for transparency as well as for pre-planning of your business.
Cool. Thanks for the.
Thank you, Bryce. I hope you can stay till the end for the panel discussion. I like your setup. It seems like you do a lot of podcasting. That's awesome.
Thanks so much. Yes, I will definitely stay until the end.
All right, awesome.